ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. We are reading from the book Meditation and Spiritual Life by Swami Yatiswarananda. We are currently in the chapter titled Spiritual Transformation, that is chapter 28. Starting the section, The God and the Demon in Us. Studying our own inner natures, we find within us contradictory elements. We do not go outside of ourselves to find the demon or God. They all dwell in us. The ancient sages of India were great metaphysicians as well as psychologists and revealed this in many an anecdote of the Upanishads. Thus we read in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that three classes of beings, gods, men and demons, all children of Prajapati, the first creator, sought instruction from him. To each of them he gave the same single syllable da as his instruction. The gods understood it to mean damyata, or control your senses and mind. The men understood it to mean datta, or control your avarice and perform acts of charity. And the demons understood it to mean dayadhvam, or control your cruel nature and be kind and compassionate. Shankara, the great mystic and philosopher of non-dualism, comments on this anecdote thus: there are no gods or demons other than men. The same species of man, according to his degree of self-control, charity and compassion, and according to the dominating tendency of sattva, which is balance, rajas, which is activity, or tamas, which is inertia, is called God, man or demon. That is why the same instruction was understood in three different ways according to the dominant nature of the hearer. Those men lacking in self-control, but otherwise endowed with good qualities, are gods. Those who have excessive greed are average men, while those who are cruel and take pleasure in injuring others are demons. All the three disciplines mentioned are meant for man to practice. For God, man and demon all dwell within our human nature, and according to our degree of balance, performance of good deeds and control of greed and cruelty, we may be called, according to our degree of balance, performance of good deeds and control of greed and cruelty, they may be called gods, men or demons. So the footnote, this is from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the anecdote 5, mantra 5.2.1 to mantra 5.2.3, and Shankara's commentary thereon, that is Shankara's Bhashya. There is a well-known passage in the Upanishads about two birds of beautiful plumage, closely united in friendship, dwelling in the same tree. One bird, deluded by ignorance, eats the fruits that grow on it with relish, while the other, which sits at the top of the tree, remains still and at peace. The lower bird, eating the fruits, stands for the satisfaction of human desires inspired by rajas or passion. The upper bird, like those who are dominated by sattva, feels no hunger for the fruits growing on the lower branches of the tree. Every once in a while, the bird who is restlessly eating without ever becoming satisfied looks up at the higher bird who is so peaceful, ready to fly away at any moment. He feels great love for his friend at the top and, longing to join him there, hops upward, but is stopped by the sight of another fruit. Finally, however, losing all desire for everything that impedes his upward progress, he succeeds in joining the other bird, only to discover that both of them are really one. This is footnote, this is from the Mundaka Upanishad, mantras 3.1.1 to mantra 3.1.3, and also from the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, mantra 4.6.7. He realizes then that through ignorance he had identified himself with Rajas, the passion-producing forces of worldly desire. When this identification ceases and the realization of his true, unchangeable spiritual nature takes place, the brute nature is transformed and transcended. Masks of the soul. Ignorance is dangerous because it makes us forget the spirit. And it is owing to this ignorance that the spirit puts on a mask, a personality. Persona means mask. We assume one mask after another to such an extent that we are unable to say what we actually are. Girish, the great actor dramatist of Bengal, used to say, "Sometimes when we had dressed up some of our actresses, I could no longer recognize them or know who was who." In the same way, the spirit puts on a subtle body, then a gross body, and then puts on all sorts of costumes over that until it is no longer able to recognize its true self. And just as we sometimes cannot find our true selves, so also we may be unable to recognize others. Unless the mask of ignorance is destroyed and we learn to see through the mask, we shall never discover the spirit within. It is this false identification of ourselves with the mask that is the cause of our suffering, the cause of our bondage. The suffering will cease as soon as the soul realizes its spiritual nature, its union with the oversoul, the other bird at the top of the tree who is always there, waiting for its beloved. According to Vedanta, the mind and the senses form the subtle covering to the soul, and our physical body is the gross covering. Both these coverings are to be so purified that they reflect the light of the spirit, which is already there. This is the purpose of all moral and spiritual disciplines. We should have a clear conception of the mind, the body, and the soul. There are many different conceptions of the relation between body and mind. Psychoanalysts consider the individual not as a body plus mind or as a mind plus body, but as an integrated body-mind. So the footnote here, C.E.A. Strucker and K.E. Appel, Discovering Ourselves, published in 1954, page 19. One of them has said, "The mind and the body are one and indivisible. Your mind is your body and vice versa." There are others who give the mind a much higher place than the body. The mind is something non-material. It cannot be seen, touched, or measured, or weighed. It is something spiritual, if you will. So again, this is from E.A. Strucker and K.E. Appel, Discovering Ourselves, published in 1954, page 9. This is an advance over the body-mind theory. Dr. Jung goes further when he says, the ego is ill for the very reason that it is cut off from the whole and has lost its connection with mankind and the spirit. The footnote, this is from Dr. Carl G. Jung, Modern Man in Search of a Soul, published in 1953, page 141. But as is clear from his book, The Modern Man in Search of a Soul, he too does not seem to have discovered that this pure spirit is different from the mind, which is merely its fine covering and instrument. Western psychology is still in its infancy, and it is too early to expect it to discover the true self of man. The Hindu sages studied all the various states of human consciousness in order to discover the true nature of man. Vedanta speaks of three bodies of man who in his essential nature is pure spirit. First, there is the causal body, the unconscious ego in which all diversity lies dormant as in deep sleep. Next comes the subtle body, a combination of the self-conscious ego, the mind, the subtle impressions of memory, the subtle organs of sense knowledge, and seeds of action, all of which are manifested in dreams. But our so-called waking state, the third state of physical activity, is often little better than a dream. The physical eye, ear, and other organs of the senses are merely instruments of the subtle forces, which express themselves as powers of seeing, hearing, and so on, the activities of everyday physical life. The gross body of physical organs is a seat for the subtle body and is controlled by it. Next section, transformation of character, an important test of spiritual change. Have you ever come across people who go about proclaiming that they have been saved and who are over anxious to force others to their way of salvation? They want to save others before they have learned to save themselves. There is a story about sham religious change. A little girl knocked at the front door of a grocery store on a Sunday morning. Her friend, the daughter of the grocer, stuck her head out of the second-story window and said, "My friend, we all went to the camp meeting and got converted. If you want milk on the Sabbath, you'll have to come around the back door." Previously, the store used to stay open on Sundays, but from now on, the front door would remain closed on that day, with business as usual done through the back door. Many of us are trying to do much the same thing. This sort of conversion, quote-unquote conversion, is worse than the old life. There should be a real change. We should change our ways for something better. Giving up the life of hypocrisy, we have to follow the moral path seriously and conquer our lower nature of tamas and rajas, the dark and disturbing forces, with the help of sattva, the harmonious quality which keeps the soul on the spiritual path. This is a lesson we learned at the feet of the great disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, who told us what had happened to some of the devotees when their master was alive. Many spiritual seekers gathered around him, especially towards the close of his life. Swami Vivekananda, the foremost of Sri Ramakrishna's disciples, found that some of his brother disciples used to wait eagerly for miraculous manifestations of the Master's divine power that always threw them into high spiritual moods. Some of them started falling into partial trances, accompanied by tears and a great show of emotion. The Swami once complained to the Master that he never experienced any such state. The Master told him that superficial emotions and visions were small things compared to the attainment of purity of mind and heart, which led to high spiritual experience and freedom, transforming human nature completely. My child, do not be disturbed. When a huge elephant runs into a pond, it sets up a great commotion there. But if it goes into the waters of the Ganga, little commotion is produced. These devotees are like small ponds, but you are like that river. This is a footnote by Sri Ramakrishna, the Great Master, by Swami Sharadananda, published in 1970, pages 864 to 872. Following the instructions of the Master, Swami Vivekananda told the young devotees that if effusions of sentiment were not followed by corresponding transformation and purity of character, strong enough to destroy worldly cravings and awaken spiritual consciousness, they were of no real value in spiritual life. Many individuals, unwilling to undergo the strict disciplines of spiritual life, keep up only a show and become hypocrites. Some who do not care to make their moral fiber strong and attain purity may become channels for the flow of great emotion whose intensity they cannot bear and thus lose their minds. But for those who sincerely follow the path, performing the duties of life as worship, and keep up the various spiritual disciplines necessary for inner purification, spiritual life is perfectly safe. We should all beware of the pitfalls of spiritual life and strive for transformation of character, which results in moral purity and strength, thus preparing ourselves for higher spiritual experiences. This alone can transmute the tamas animal or demon and the rajas man in us into the sattva God which we potentially are, and lead us at last to the realization of the Supreme Spirit, the highest goal of life. In the earlier chapters, we have already discussed the details of the various disciplines necessary for the purification of our nature. Let us now dwell for a moment on what happens if we attain more and more sattva. The marks of one who is established in sattva established in that purity which is the result of moral and spiritual disciplines are: 1. The body becomes light, one is no longer weighed down by so much body consciousness. As the senses become bright and strong, one attains a greater balance. The mind becomes wide awake, and through the clarified intellect, joy wells up. A new spiritual consciousness dawns. The soul becomes conscious of the oversoul. The lower bird of the parable becomes conscious of the higher bird, the eternal witness. Disentangling itself from all false identification with ego, mind, senses, and body, the soul rises to higher planes of consciousness until it attains union with the Oversoul. This is the culmination of spiritual activity. The Upanishad declares, when the seer realizes the effulgent Supreme Being, the Creator, the Lord, and the source of cosmic existence, then that wise man, having shaken off all vice and virtue, attains the supreme stainless unity. So this is from the Mundaka Upanishad, Mantra 3.1.3. Yada pashyate rukmavarnam kartaramisham purusham brahma yonim tada vidvan पुण्यपापे विधूय निरञ्जनः paramam samyamupaiti. And Sri Krishna tells us in the Gita, free from all imperfections and doubts, with senses and mind controlled, engaged in the good of all beings, the sage attains absolute freedom here and hereafter. Labhante Brahma Nirvanam Rishayah Kshina Kalmashaha Chinnadvaidhayatatmanas Sarvabhuta Hite Rathaha. So this is another translation. Sages whose impurities have been destroyed, whose doubts have been resolved, who have self-mastery, and who are happily engaged in the good of all beings, gain liberation. This is the ideal of the God-man. In order to attain this great ideal, we should bring about a transformation in our life. Spiritual ideal should not always remain an quote-unquote ideal for us. Spiritual practice should not forever remain a quote-unquote practice for us, perfunctorily gone through. It should change our life. Our life must be transformed. One day or other, we too should attain the God's man purity, divine consciousness, and love. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.